to the final session of this track, the PGC Monetiser track, sponsored by AppAnnie, which will be a panel on how to maximize ARPDAU with a hybrid approach. We're still just waiting for a few panelists to show up, so I'll just quickly remind everybody of our diamond sponsors, Agora, to my right, your left. Our platinum sponsors, Microsoft GameStack, Denuvo by Denuvo, and Facebook Gaming, and our gold sponsors, AppLovin, Unity, G-Star, 10 Square Games, Twitter, and Singular. We wouldn't be doing this without the support of all of those companies. This isn't the end of PGC for today, by the way. If you are waiting for more content afterwards or looking for more content afterwards, our other tracks are still running a bit later than this one. But we will get started soon when the panelists start showing up. We've also got, if you are interested in our Careers Week, we've got a bunch of stuff going on. Check out the Careers Week jobs board on pocketgamer.biz, the website that I edit. And if you do want to talk to journalists like me and more fun journalists who actually play games and don't just write about the business behind them, we do have the journalist bar each day on our Discord from 2 till 3 p.m. I do actually join in on those because it's a lot of fun. We get to talk and offer some insight into what's going through our brains when we're looking at your games, which is always, I'm sure, insightful and helpful. Let's run down some more stuff that we can do. Do use the Q&A function, even with the panels. They obviously have a lot of time towards the end where we can answer any questions. And because this is the end of the track, we can hang around a bit longer if there's some good discussion going on. And do get on Twitter and tweet out your thoughts and favorite sessions, favorite speakers, all that kind of stuff. Any great quotes you've heard on Twitter, and use the hashtag PGC Helsinki to share some of those around. We will be back again tomorrow. I will be back again tomorrow to host another track in the morning. And this whole thing is running for the rest of the week. So if you are still excited to learn more about mobile games, I know I certainly am, you can join us for the rest of the week and it will be phenomenal. Okay, I think we're now ready to start bringing people in. So we should shortly be joined by Idil from AppLovin, who I think is we're just waiting for her to connect to the audio and stuff. And there we are. Hi, Idil.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Hanging in there.
Fantastic. Yeah, it looks like we've got everybody joining in. So I'll just quickly say again, yeah, this is the How to Maximize ARPDAU with a Hybrid Approach panel with Idil Canal as the moderator, and I will leave it up to you.
Awesome. Thank you for kicking us off, Rick. Hello, everyone. My name is Idil. I'm the General Manager of Max at AppLovin, and I'll be your moderator today. A little bit about us. AppLovin is a global leader in mobile entertainment. We build popular immersive games and powerful technology for developers to bring their games to more players around the world. Max is our full stack monetization platform built on in-app bidding. We help the world's leading gaming studios grow their businesses through a 360 partnership. That means we help them monetize with in-app bidding, make more money, and scale their games through user acquisition with our full stack developer-friendly tools. Today's session will focus on one of this year's hot topics, in-app bidding, and its role in hybrid monetization structures. We'll hear from our guests on both the game studio side and the demand side. We're excited to have Ben from Facebook Audience Network, Ritesh from Clipwire Games, and Luke from HyperHippo joining us today. They'll tell us all the secrets of how they have seen success with effectively mixing ad revenue with in-app purchases in a hybrid monetization stack. Without further ado, let's go ahead and do a quick round of introductions, everyone. Ben, do you want to go first?
Yeah, happy to. My name is Ben Figueroa with Facebook Audience Network. I work with studios across North America, helping them kind of optimize their monetization and growth strategies.
Awesome. Luke, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I am Luke Gorman. I am the Senior Growth Lead at HyperHippo Games. I focus on all things ad monetization, a little bit of UA, and also looking at soft launch strategy for our new titles.
Awesome. And Ritesh, I think you're on mute. Yeah.
Yeah. Ritesh Khanna here. I'm the CEO over at Clipwire Games. We're based out of Toronto. Our biggest title is Bingo Story. It's grown quite a bit over the last year. It's really exciting. Yeah, that's our story.
So on that note, let's talk a little bit more about the studios. So on the supply side, Ritesh and Luke, I want to hear more about HyperHippo and Clipwire. What type of games do you guys make, and where's the team based? Ritesh, do you want to just continue on that since you kept?
Yeah, I already said I already gave it away, but we're based in Toronto, although we're now hiring in a more broad area because we are functioning remotely. We do have a few titles. We've got a solitaire title as well and a word title as well, but our main focus is surrounded on bingo.
Awesome. What about you guys, Luke?
Yeah, cool. First of all, I want to say thank you for having me on the panel. Really excited to be here chatting with AppLovin and talking about HyperHippo a little bit. HyperHippo is a really cool studio based out of Kelowna, British Columbia. We're a studio of just over 60 people, but we also have offices in Vancouver and Seattle, which is where I'm based out of. We pride ourselves on making some of the best auto games in the world, but people might know us a bit more specifically from Adventure Capitalist and Adventure Communist. Both titles have a modest DAU of around about 150, and our split between IAP and ads is around 50-50. While it's not the most impressive DAU numbers in the world, our company focus is really putting players first, and because of that, we've seen just some awesome players, and personally some of the best players that I've seen in the industry.
Awesome. Okay, so let's deep dive into the formats a little bit. Switching over to you, Ben. For those of us who are not familiar, can you explain what the main differences are in monetization approaches?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first one is IAA, or in-app advertising. Basically means advertising that's integrated into your mobile games. So think of formats like rewarded video, interstitial, native, banner. All of these formats are displayed like right in the context and ecosystem of the game. IAP stands for in-app purchase. IAP basically allows users to buy additional functionalities or features, right, that are integrated into free-to-play games. So virtual currencies, level unlocks, virtual items, and hybrid. Hybrid is really just a mix of those two strategies, right? It's probably the most dominant monetization strategy, I would say, in mobile games today. We did a research study with Walnut Unlimited in 2019. And basically, of all the developers that we surveyed, about 69% of the large developers chose a hybrid model as their top, used monetization strategy.
Okay, great. So now let's ask the supply side. What type of monetization structures are you guys using today? Is it ads, is it in-app purchases, or is it a hybrid model like Ben said? And did this combination change, or have you guys always used a hybrid approach? Ritesh, do you want to go first?
Sure. So we started out IAP only. I didn't think ads was right for us. But it's been about 2 years now since we tried it out the first time, and just on the first day, like immediately the results were positive, and it was obvious that we shouldn't be doing IAP only. We should be doing hybrid. So we did one placement, liked it. We did another placement. We saw the numbers go up, and as we kept adding placements and being creative on, what would be good places for people to view ads, we were able to increase the number of ads we ran in the game. And I believe at this point now we're between 30 and 40% of our revenue coming from the ad side.
And it was incremental, I'm guessing, since you mentioned that it was additive.
Yeah, so each time we added, we saw a little bit more. Awesome. And we've kind of kept adding as long as we could and wherever we could.
Nice, I like that. And to you, Luke, what do you think about it?
Yeah, so as I briefly touched upon before, our split between ads and IAP tends to be around 50-50. Depending on certain events, we have some months that can actually be heavier weighted on ads. It's been our approach since the get-go, pretty much. Our major focus for ads is on rewarded video, which actually accounts for over 95% of our ad revenue. We do utilize off-wall and interstitials, but that's only in adventure capitalist, and our focus here is obviously a lot smaller. Since we do have an equal reliance on ads and IAP, managing the waterfall is definitely a really important task week over week. And so, yeah, kind of the theme of today, the implementation of bidding since we switched to Max has just been huge in terms of dropping the manual workload. And our growth team is just myself and one other member. And so getting that time back has just been a huge burden lifted off our shoulders.
Awesome. So let's build on that. And the next question is a great transition. So how did that process, you mentioned that it has been a lot easier for two people to manage the whole stack now that you guys are using bidding, the hybrid measure. So how frequently did you guys need to communicate with one another before, and how did that change now? Let's start with you, and then we can hear more from the demand side as well.
Yeah, sure. So it's primarily just myself managing the waterfall. My other member has to focus a lot more on the UA side, but operating manual waterfalls was exactly that. It was manual. The lack of bidding forces your hand at a traditional setup, and this can still produce results, but definitely at the cost of time. So before switching to Max, we had weekly meetings with several, if not all of our partners, all of whom were fighting for those top fill spots, the ever important top of stack spots that everybody wants. The change to Max and the incorporation of bidding had just been a big game changer to put my focus elsewhere. To put into perspective, the amount of line items we had were around 40 or 50 per geo before switching to Max, and we had it structured so it was US and then tier 1, tier 2, rest of the world, and then within tier 1, tier 2, it would be another anywhere from 10 to 30 line items per geo within those tiers. So since we enabled bidding, those line items have really more than been cut in half. So not to mention the geo management has just been a lot more fluid. So the line items that we're managing now has just drastically been reduced, which has been awesome.
Yeah, and now let's hear from the demand side. Ben, from your perspective, how did that transition affect your day-to-day management? How frequently did you need to communicate with one another?
Yeah. From the network perspective, to back up a little bit, I think with the waterfall mediation, when an ad impression becomes available, a publisher's ad server calls those demand sources one by one, right, in order of average historic prices. So not really what those demand sources or networks are willing to pay for that particular impression at that particular moment. I mean, this means, kind of to Luke's point, that the waterfall, is kind of problematic and inefficient for both buyers and sellers. Publishers don't truly maximize their overall ad revenue opportunity, and advertisers don't really get a fair shot at the inventory. As far as communication, I mean, again, to Luke's point, right? We're not fighting over first fill anymore. I think, back in those days, things got pretty aggressive, and, it's a breath of fresh air that we don't have to be kind of jockeying for position week in and week out. It's led to, greater efficiency for sure.
Awesome. And Ritesh, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, like when we first started, I was almost like, when I first learning how the waterfall worked, I was surprised that this is the way you need to do it. So I'm really glad that the change is coming. Like, this is how I imagined it would be before we started. And then we realized it wasn't that, and now it is becoming that. So it's great.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. So let's build on that a little bit on the publisher side. This is for you, Ritesh and Luke. You guys are both using Max as your monetization platform, and you're very familiar with our A/B testing tool. How did you measure the impact of the manual changes you made in your waterfall structure before you moved to Max? What did the world look like back then? You want to start?
Sure.
Maybe
I can jump in. Awesome. Measuring performance was really done on two broader levels for us. That was like a network level and an overall level. Whether the overall level be game, platform, portfolio, and the network level is obviously on the network basis. Our most important metric being ARPDAU. typically when making a change to the waterfall, we would measure the change to ARPDAU on both the network and the overall level. And it was definitely a bigger part and to do with communication with the networks, because they want their ARPDAU to increase, we want their ARPDAU to increase, but if the overall ARPDAU decreases, then it makes things a little bit more muddy in the water. So this was challenging because there is typically multiple changes made within the waterfall. So measuring a single change was seldom the case. We seldom had that luxury. So because of that, it was difficult to understand which change you made had the direct impacts. So now the ability to A/B test has really been game changing because it's just been so much easier to implement. So with the A/B test, we're able to test every change before implementing it, and we're able to break down those changes per geo and per placement, which usually allows us to appreciate the test in one form or another. So we're actually at a point now, we've been A/B testing a lot since we've switched to Max. And so most of the tests actually just have very similar results or maybe slightly greater results. But for the most part, now we've been able to utilize the A/B testing tool to a point where we actually don't even need to touch the waterfall that much, which is great.
Well, I love it. I love power users. But when it comes to A/B testing, I think there are very different strategies. Some publishers go for only promoting changes that are incremental so that there is an increase in their overall ARPDAU. And some publishers or developers, they choose to promote things that give them a larger and well-distributed share of voice change, so that it's not just a single demand buyer that's only taking 60% of their revenue. They like a healthy distribution. So back to you, Ritesh, on that same topic. How did you guys manage the manual changes and see the differences in the waterfall?
Yeah, it wasn't easy. Our experience sounds very similar to Luke's, where you would go in and you would talk to people, you would see what's going on, you would look at as many reports as you could, and you just make guesses, and you would try different things, and then you would wait a week or two, and maybe there was some event, who knows what could have happened, but hopefully your changes resulted in a positive shift, and that positive shift was a result of your changes, and then you'd stick with it and try to iterate. But it wasn't easy. There was no science to it. I'd like to say we A/B test as well as Luke sounds like he's doing, but it's definitely a big improvement. We're not leaving as much on the table anymore.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it as well, not leaving money on the table. So the amount of effort and the manual changes were time consuming from what you guys have explained. How impactful has bidding been in this picture? Could you guys share, and I think Luke, you briefly mentioned this, but what percentage of your ad revenue is now coming from in-app bidders versus a traditionally mediated networks and hybrid setup? Ritesh, maybe we'll start with you first.
Yeah, so when we first put in our first one, it was really exciting because it was Facebook, and we saw a 20% lift right away. It was immediate to switch to bidding.
Did you hear that?
And then as more and more started, we now have 3 of them. They've grown in their share, and right now they're doing 70% of the total the total placements. And it's been a huge time saver. Like anything that saves you time and prevents you from having recurring meetings and everything like that. I mean, who doesn't want that stuff? Who doesn't want to automate, right?
Yeah, and you guys also use, I think you guys are a power user when it comes to bidders because you have your own floors so that in certain geos, your valuable users are not even exposed to ads, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
That's where it makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And from your perspective, Luke, what was the percentage if you look at the overall titles, if it was a range, let's say?
Yeah, sure. So snowballing off of Ritesh, it's been huge. So our overall percentage of bidding in terms of ad revenue is we're getting about half of our ad revenue from bidders, which is great. And that's obviously a huge impact and increase from before when we had 0 bidders. And just the implementation of having bidders is just such a game changer because the only optimization needed with bidders is really on a geo level. But since we have a pretty good idea of which networks perform well in the respective geos, we don't really even need to focus on those networks nearly as much. So again, since the implementation of bidding, that is about 50% of our revenue, and we really only have about an average of 20 line items total per ad unit now. So just much less work.
Yeah. So now that you guys no longer need to communicate with networks and you get your 20% lift with just moving to Facebook bidding, where do you guys allocate your time now? Where do you allocate that additional time that you have? Is it monetization or growth? So Luke, let's start with you. You mentioned that you oversee both user acquisition and monetization side. So you have a 360 view of the day-to-day management. Could you give us some examples of what you've been able to spend more time on?
Sure. Yeah. So since we're such a small and nimble team at HyperHippo, as you mentioned, I need to dedicate a lot of my time to the UA side of the business as well as the monetization side. On the UA side, I primarily manage SDK networks as well as a few campaigns on social networks, specifically Snapchat, all of which for those who have managed these, especially the SDK networks, can be quite time consuming. So the time I've been able to get back from the monetization side has been huge when shifting our focus to scaling campaigns on the UA side. We also have a few really exciting titles in soft launch that I mentioned in the intros. So now I'm able to allocate some of my time towards our soft launch strategy as well as scaling these campaigns week over week. And this time I've gotten back would have been nearly impossible without bidding and A/B tests.
Awesome. And Ritesh, I know you have a similar team structure as well. They oversee UA and monetization together. How has that helped you guys to become more efficient?
Yeah, so we're even smaller than Luke. We're only a team of 20, and when we were doing this, we were even smaller. So the shift to from trying to get a little bit more here and a little bit more there, to just letting the bidding do its thing and then focusing on UA is so valuable. We can focus on UA. We can even focus on the side of UA after the user comes into the app, which is a lot of value as well. So yeah, I mean, because we were small and we are still small, a lot of people do a lot of things. So now that's just one less thing people need to do.
Yeah, great. Let's take a few steps back. And Ben, this is a question for you. Let's hear more from your perspective. What influenced Facebook audience networks move towards bidding, and how do you see it improving the industry for game developers and publishers?
Okay. Yeah, let me start with kind of what influenced us. I think our app bidding journey really started back in 2017. That's when we first started testing with some of our initial partners, both publishers and some of our initial partners out in the ecosystem. And it's continued to be a priority for us to help make bidding just more accessible to publishers. We feel it's a way to foster a more fair and open ecosystem, and it provides a real business benefit to our partners. And that's why we offer, a variety of ways to kind of integrate bidding, whether a publisher wants to go an in-house solution or whether they want to go through a mediation solution like Max. The second part of that question, how is bidding improving the industry? From what we've seen, and we did a report last year called The New Era in Monetization, and we kind of took away, two key takeaways from that, right? Increased ad revenue. I think when you have every demand source bidding in an open and fair, like real-time auction, you just see more competition on the inventory, which means better prices for every impression. And then the second kind of takeaway from that was improved operational efficiency. I think it's something that Luke and Ritesh kind of just spoke to, right? When you have, by removing the burden of maintaining that kind of complex waterfall, bidding really just frees up more time for your team to kind of focus on driving more impact on other parts of the business, whether that's UA or design or whatever it may be. Within that same kind of new era and monetization report that we published last year, everybody from Rovio to GameHive, Triple Dot, Fungi Games, Game Insight even, all reported the same kind of stuff, right? More time to optimize their app experience, more freedom to integrate new demand sources, overall just more resources to kind of focus on important parts of the business.
Yeah, and let's talk about rewarded video a lot more. Ads, specifically rewarded video, have been shown to have a positive impact on retention. What have you guys seen there?
Yeah, so from, with regards to bidding adoption continues to gain more momentum across the industry. I think in this last year alone, the number of apps using bidding with Facebook Audience Network has, I think, 7x'd over the last year. I think among our top 10 publishers, a majority of them are now using bidding. So that includes folks like Voodoo, Zynga, Newsbreak, etc. To further that point, of all the publishers that have adopted bidding with Audience Network, half are now earning, their revenue back through bidding rather than that waterfall mediation.
Nice. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the latest announcements on iOS 14 and Apple. Luke and Ritesh, this one is for you guys. There's been a lot of speculation about the latest privacy changes with iOS 14, and they're now delaying these changes. How do you see this impacting your user acquisition and monetization strategy in the short term? Because Q4 is right ahead of us. And then let's talk about 2021 in terms of the long-term vision that you guys have. Ritesh, let's start with you.
Yeah, it's a tough question in a tough situation. We're not sure how to look. I don't think our strategy is going to change much, right? We're still going to be running ads. There's still going to be bidding. It's still going to be an important part of how it's going to happen, how we're going to monetize. We already monetize a portion of audience that doesn't have the tracking enabled, and with just the contextual data that is enough to get decent eCPMs. We're just going to have to prepare for that, just more of that, right? And that being the standard way to go. On the acquisition side, it's pretty much the same thing. We're going to need to keep doing UA. We're going to have to keep running our ads. So we're going to kind of lean on the networks to help us out there and see what we can still do. And I think it'll still be successful. Like I don't think it's going to harm us too much.
Yeah. What about you, Luke?
Yeah, so in the short term, I won't pretend that there aren't problems iOS 14 poses, because unfortunately that would be a lie. On the UA side, we are working with our data team to build a model of our users based on events completed within the first 24 hours of install, which will help us optimize campaigns based on the number of those completions. For the monetization side, we are forecasting a drop in CPMs from likely all of our partners. We'll need to structure our waterfalls a little bit differently, specifically between LAT versus non-LAT users. So our optimization strategy is going to change relative to where it's at right now. In the long run, I do see numbers stabilizing as models become more accurate, but our main focus is tackling the issue one step at a time. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of missing information from both Apple and the network, so bit of a conundrum, but I like to say our strategy is to stay proactively reactive as information comes to light, meaning that we won't be able to prepare for everything yet, but each side of the business is on their toes and ready to allocate those resources when the information does come to light.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's spot on. So Ben, from your perspective, in the next 2021 and in this post iOS 14 era, bidding is now being adopted universally across our industry with great results. How do you see bidding evolving in this new era?
Yeah. Let me kind of just address the iOS 14 issue, at least from our perspective, since it has been a hot topic, I would say, over the last couple of weeks. So as many of you know or are aware of, in June, Apple announced, updates taking place with the release of iOS 14. And we, Facebook, shared how we're going to be addressing those changes, which initially included, we weren't going to be collecting IDFA on our own apps on iOS 14 devices. Given kind of that breath of fresh air, the Apple's announcement that they're kind of delaying that implementation of the user permission requirement, we're going to continue collecting IDFA on iOS 14, more so in an attempt to just kind of reduce any unnecessary disruption to our publishers' business. But I think we, along with the rest of the developer community, kind of continue to await that final policy details from Apple. But we stand strong with more than, I think, 19,000 developers now and publishers that lean on Audience Network in some form or fashion, to monetize and really support their businesses. So, and we're going to continue to share updates as we learn more about Apple's policies and what actions our publishers can take. But just know that we're continuing to work on short and long-term strategies that are going to help support these changes. But okay, so now what is bidding going to look like post iOS 14? I think as publishers work on their own IDFA mitigation strategies, we're going to encourage them to move to bidding. I think as Audience Network, We believe that bidding remains kind of the most impactful way for publishers to maximize their overall ad revenue opportunity. I think, to Luke's point, given some of the unpredictable impacts and changes to CPMs, over the next couple months, it's likely that adapting and updating waterfalls is just going to become more difficult and more time consuming in this new world. With bidding, however, you're already kind of set up to receive the highest possible price and can benefit from the improvements that demand sources are going to be making without really having to reconfigure those existing waterfalls. So we believe that moving away from the waterfall remains the most impactful way for our publishers to maximize yield and their ad revenue.
Well said. 100% +1. Completely agree. All right. So to wrap it up, last question, and this one is for you, Luke. As a studio who monetizes heavily through in-app purchases, would you suggest that other studios have a lot to gain through moving to a platform like Max that supports in-app bidding?
Definitely. I know each mediation has its own benefits, and there's definitely a lot of great minds in the industry, but since we switched to Max, I really haven't looked back. Switching to Max has been really a win-win all around. HyperHippo just had its highest earnings per month in August for ad revenue. And since we internalized publishing back in January, and each month since we've switched, we've seen our ARPDAU and our revenue increase month over month. So aside from that clear performance boost, the time I've gotten back from bidding and A/B testing has really allowed me to focus my time and energy elsewhere. So kind of just going with the theme of the day of earning time back, all I'll say is if you want to earn a little bit more money for your company for a lot less work, then I would definitely consider Max. Although I realize I've been leaning into this less work thing maybe a little bit too much. I know there's some other hippos listening in, so maybe I won't want to fall into that too much.
Awesome. Music to my ears. So that's great recommendations all around. And I think we have some time on the clock. Back to you, Rick. Should we maybe start with Q&A now?
Yes, let's do some Q&A. So thank you everybody for the panel so far. We do have quite a few questions in the Q&A. So I'll start with one. I think somebody tried to ask this a bit earlier and I sort of missed it. So we will go with anonymous attendee wants to know how to set up price floors in a hybrid waterfall. I will allow anybody to jump in on any of these questions.
I can jump in on that. It's very easy. It's essentially setting up, so you set up your bidder, which you don't really need any price floors on that. It's kind of plug and chug there. And then setting up your CPM floors with any network. So essentially half your networks can be bidding. So you really just turn it on and go. And then other networks that aren't in bidding, you can adjust your CPM floors based on where you want to put them within your stack.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Luke. I hope whoever asked that twice has now got their answer and is very happy. We'll go on to the next one. What are the minimum number of impressions per ad format, per ad network for in-app bidding to be effective? And again, anyone?
I'll take this one.
Yeah, fabulous.
I'll jump on this question because it's a great question. So 2 pieces to that. In terms of having a dense auction, what we always say is that you really want to have Facebook in your auction. And on Max, obviously, we have AppLovin participating as well, but we also have a lot more bidders as well. So in general, you want to have at least 3 in-app bidders in the auction, and having Facebook makes a huge difference, especially for formats like rewarded video, where they're the most competitive out there in the market. But in terms of ad format and ad networks that you want to have in your waterfall, one of the things that we highlight when publishers move to Max or when they're testing different solutions or A/B testing, moving a network from a traditional setup to a bidder, we always ask them to think about their in per DAU, right? Because if you're showing only 1 interstitial or 1 rewarded video per session, you're only monetizing and trying to maximize that one. But the lift is exponential. So the more that you show, not that you have to show more ads, but if you have 2, 3 in per DAU in terms of the number of impressions you show for rewarded video, the lift is going to be exponential in each one. So that's a combination of the answer, I think, but we could go into more details if there are more questions.
Cool. We'll go on to the next question from Tanvir, who wants to know, how well do the bidders work in conjunction with Google optimized high/mid/low floors? And also, what are the early observations on bidders' performance on LAT hybrid waterfall? It's 2 questions, but anyone feel free to answer whichever one makes you think you can answer.
That's a great question. And I think Luke would be great in answering the Google piece, because I think they have a very solid setup when it comes to using the right combination of price floors and geos for Google. And maybe I can speak to the LAT piece because we just released a new feature on this one.
Sure. So really, we've seen before switching to Max and post switching to Max, Google has had a pretty strong share of voice in our waterfall, and nothing has changed actually. With the addition of bidders, we still use the high, medium, low floors for Google, and with the bidders in there, Google still is pretty strong in terms of share of voice. So surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, their bid has been quite competitive within our waterfall, even with the bidders in there. So yeah, I guess moral of the story is no big changes.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think some additional work that we do when we help publishers test bidders or move to Max is also understanding what their waterfall will look like in this hybrid setup, right? When you're switching from 0% in-app bidding demand from a traditional mediation platform over to Max, where you're going to have 60-70% bidded, you have to think about what this world will look like and what does that mean for your waterfall. So with Google specifically, we do a lot of granular optimizations and help publishers out in terms of what the best practices are, so that they don't just have 3 lines for a global waterfall. They give Google a better chance and all the other mediated line items a better setup, so that there's competition for bidders to also perform well. In terms of LAT, I think that's a great question because a lot of people are now actively working on it. There will be improvements, and I know from our side as well, we're already seeing an increase in CPMs and fill from just our bidder as well. In the past couple of weeks, we still continue to make changes. And I know that there are some networks in terms of bidders that are actively working on addressing and improving fill as well. So what we see right now is that there's probably going to be a 20-40% drop in overall CPMs, but in the next 2 weeks or a month, you can assume that all networks are actively working on improving their algorithms. So that number is probably going to be lower and lower over time.
Cool. Still got some time and a few more questions. Anonymous attendee wants to know, how do you prevent valuable users from seeing ads, and was it easy to set up? Ritesh, you've come off mute, so you can jump in.
Yeah, so we do this, and we mentioned it earlier. Setting it up, super easy. You just got to define what valuable means to you in your game. And once you know what that is you just don't put the placement in there. It's easy to, it's just up to a developer to put that logic in there. So the technical part isn't very difficult. The challenge comes is when you start doing this, your highest bids come from the users who you tend to see as valuable. So you will see like a disproportionate drop in your eCPM. So you got to figure out what makes sense. Like, is your definition of valuable correct? Because you may actually want to show some of these people ads because they get the highest bid from the networks. So just get that right definition of valuable to get this right.
Excellent, thank you. Another anonymous attendee would like to know, do you allow any types of ads in your game? I guess that's like, as in, do you allow all types of ads in your game? And do you accept ads for other games? And what's the impact on eCPM when you do so?
So most of our ads are from other games, and we allow almost every. There's some, like, we know our audience, and some ads are a little bit like edgy and stuff. We don't like any of that stuff. So aside from that, we let it roll. And it is mostly games, you know, and removing a few games here or there that we don't like, not a noticeable impact on eCPM from our end.
Cool. Luke, anything on that?
Yeah, so can kind of echo Ritesh on that point. We do have ads that are against our policy at HyperHippo. So we block kind of adult content, anything like that. But for the most part, we pretty much also let it roll. We do do a bidded cross promotion within our games. Not a whole bunch, but we do cross promote within our games as well. But for the most part, most of the ads are other games and abide by our policies. And then kind of another great part about Max is the addition of Safe DK, which allows us to see which ads are being shown in our game. So we actually have a report that flags ads that don't abide by our policy. So as soon as that happens, I actually got an email this morning from Safe DK about an ad that was against our policy, and all I have to do is click about 2 buttons and it sends an email to our account manager and gets it blocked within about a day at most. So it's pretty easy to manage the ads that are being shown in your game.
Awesome. We've still got a couple more questions. We've got a bit of time, so I'll just throw these out there. Does in-app bidding increase eCPMs of banners?
I'll take this one since both of these guys do not use banners. Yes, it does. But in terms of in-app bidding and banners, really most of the movement on the demand side has been on interstitial and rewarded video networks, right? So for banners, we're waiting on networks like InMobi, Smarto, and AdColony is now adding support for banners as well. So for in-app bidding to work, you need dense auctions for your platform to support all of these networks. Within a month or so, we're actually going to transition all these names to fully to bidding. So I think the answer will be yes, you will see an improvement in there as well. But in general, with banners, I think the value add, and People Fun, I think, spoke to that recently really well. They set up a lot of line items. So the operational ease, as long as even the revenue is identical, the hours that is saved from not setting up billions of line items at like 5-cent increments for a banner waterfall is the value add there.
Awesome. And final question is from an anonymous attendee who says, Max is great. When can we expect Max to support Fire OS?
I have a feeling this is one of our existing clients. Well, the answer is let's chat offline, because I'm not convinced that there's more than one network that needs to be live in a Fire OS mediated waterfall. But yeah, let's chat offline.
Awesome. That is all the questions and all we really have time for. So I will just say thank you for the panel for joining me, and thank you for the discussion. It was really interesting, and I hope everybody very much enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.